Where is God when life gets tough? When life throws us a real curveball, it can feel like God is nowhere to be found, and we're just left to struggle on our own. Psalm 27 speaks into that feeling because it's a reflection on how God protects us and guards us, even in the most difficult times of life, and how we can practically seek God out when life is tough for us. And that's what I want to spend a few minutes thinking about today. Psalm 27 reminds us of how close we are to God in the present moment. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? But that may seem all well and good when life is going well. But what about when we're struggling in life? Well, this psalm was written by King David when he was experiencing just that. From other verses in this psalm, we get the sense that life was a real struggle for him. Listen to some of these verses. Evildoers assail me to devour my flesh. An army encamp about me. War rises up against me. False witnesses have risen up against me, and they are breathing out violence. When David wrote this psalm, he was going through a really tough time, and he was being threatened physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But even in the midst of his struggles, David knew that God was with him and would protect him. So how do we find God when life is tough? Firstly, we need to focus on what we know about God, not how we feel about God. In verse 4, David writes this, "One thing I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life." There have been times in my life when I have felt really close to God. But the reality, for me at least, is that I have lived with a sense of the absence of God far more than I've lived with a sense of the presence of God. When people I loved have died, when I've been ill or have watched others become ill, when the plans I've made for my life have not come to fruition. So I have often had to remind myself what I know about God rather than how I feel about God. If my faith relied on my feelings, then my faith would never really grow at all. Instead, I have a personal history in which I've seen the footprints of God in my life, and so I know that He has been with me. And when times get tough, I can go back to what I know rather than rely on how I feel. It's such a crucial spiritual discipline for us all to develop. But there's one more thing to say about this if we read verse 4 again. "One thing I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and to inquire in His temple." For David, there was a direct link between holding firm with God and regularly attending worship. Now, I've said this many times before, and I will say it many times again, that when life is tough or seems chaotic, we must resist the temptation to stop coming to church. It's so easy to fall into that trap. When we feel far away from God, we give church a miss one Sunday, and then we give it a miss a second Sunday, and then the pattern starts to emerge, and we find it very easy to cease coming to church altogether. But such a decision is fatal for us, because we cannot stay strong in faith if we stop meeting with our church family to worship together, in building or online. We need to stay plugged into the church family, even when we may not feel like it, otherwise our faith will just wither and die. Secondly, we need to pursue beauty in life and find God in that. In verse 4, David writes this, "To live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord." Beauty is such an important thing for us. Beauty feeds our souls, beauty enlives our imagination, beauty makes us feel whole as it engages our creativity. Wherever you find beauty, pursue it, because in beauty you will find the face of God. Just as we need food to nourish our bodies, we need beauty to nourish our souls. So much of our world contains violence and brutality that we need to temper that with beauty. And we need to share our experiences of beauty with one another and learn about beauty from one another. In beauty, you will find the face of God as you proactively decide to pursue beauty, so your heart will soften and you will rediscover the closeness of God to you. So when David wrote this psalm, he was going through a tough time. He was in danger physically, emotionally and spiritually. In the natural course of things, he didn't feel close to God. So he knew that he should proactively seek out 2 ways of filling his life to change that. He had to focus on what he knew about God rather than how he felt about God. He had to pursue beauty and find in that the face of God. And that is what life is all about, the journey into intimacy with God. And we need patience for that. As David wrote in the last verse of this psalm, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. If you're experiencing a chaotic period in your life right now, wait on the Lord. Focus on what you know to be true. Pursue beauty, and intimacy with God will return as sure as night follows day.